Hello and welcome to this presentation of the 2018 Montana Infrastructure Report Card. I am Craig Nowak and I am with the Great Falls office of Morrison-Maierle. I am also a member of the American Society of Civil Engineers, or ASCE, Montana section. ASCE is the oldest engineering society in the country and represents about 150,000 civil engineers. In Montana, we have about 500 members. One of our tasks has been to develop this report card, which we are presenting today. Today we'll be sharing the results of the infrastructure report card and explore solutions to raise the grades. Now I do realize that I'm preaching to the choir of engineers, but our goal is to advance discussion beyond this group, to the public and to the policymakers throughout the state. As you may know, every 4 years, ASCE National prepares an assessment of our major infrastructure categories in its National Infrastructure Report Card. We in Montana did this in 2014 and updated it here again in 2018. Using a simple, familiar A to F school report card format, the report card examines current infrastructure conditions and needs, assigns grades, and makes recommendations to raise these grades. Infrastructure has a very real impact on every person and business in our state. It impacts how we get to work, where we take vacations, how much we pay for goods and services, and enables us to live healthy lives. I emphasize that the report card is a snapshot for residents, businesses, and policymakers to engage in conversation about where we are and where we want to be. We hope this information provides the insight needed to start this conversation. The 2018 Report Card Committee is a group of dedicated civil engineers from Montana who volunteered our time to find and analyze existing sources of data and to develop the final report card. The committee then examined each category in the context of 8 key criteria before determining a grade. Those criteria as listed on this slide include capacity. Does the infrastructure's capacity meet current and future needs? The condition. What is the infrastructure's existing and near future physical condition? Funding. What is the current level of funding from all levels of government for the infrastructure category? The future need. What is the cost to improve the infrastructure? Operation and maintenance. What is the owner's ability to operate and maintain the infrastructure properly? Public safety. To what extent is the public's safety jeopardized by the condition, and what could be the consequences of failure? Resilience. What is the infrastructure system's capability to protect against significant multi-hazard threats and incidents? And how able is it to quickly recover? These incidents might first be thought of as natural disasters, but we also must think to the current day of cyber threats and even terrorist actions. And finally, innovation. What new and innovative techniques, materials, technologies, and delivery methods are being implemented? Now, to refresh your memories from your school days as to what each grade means, an A is an exceptional. It's fit for the future and in excellent condition. B, the infrastructure is good. It's adequate for now, but some elements show signs of general deterioration that require attention. C, it's mediocre. It requires attention. Some elements exhibit significant deficiencies with increasing vulnerability. I think of a C as the worst of the best and the best of the worst. And a D, many elements are approaching the end of their service life. The condition and capacity are of serious concern with strong risk of failure. And an F means that the infrastructure is unfit with signs of imminent failure. Once the various categories are graded, those grades are then averaged, just as on a school report card, to determine the overall grade. The committee went on to make recommendations to raise the grades for the state's infrastructure in each of the categories. The Montana Report Card followed the same methodology as ASCE's National Report Card, which gave the country's infrastructure a D+ in 2017. Not really good. The cumulative grade of D+ reflects a significant backlog of needs facing our nation's infrastructure. You can see several Ds, D+, and even a D- on the National Report Card there. Where we do see areas of infrastructure that improved, those categories benefited from strong leadership, thoughtful policymaking, and investments that garnered results. Here are the 10 categories for Montana's report card. We'll go into more detail a little bit later. In 2018, Montana's infrastructure received an overall grade of a C. The report card finds that a good portion of Montana's infrastructure is old and outdated. But recently there have been efforts to reverse these trends. The legislature raised the gas tax to provide for revenue to qualify for matching federal funds for roads and bridges. Some school districts have and are continuing to vote on bonds for school infrastructure. And approximately 25% of the population is now benefiting from major upgrades to their wastewater systems. While the additional funding is helpful, we need a sustained focus on our infrastructure to maintain the state's economy and high quality of life. So let's spend a few minutes to go over each of the 10 categories graded on Montana's report card. Let's first look at the stormwater utility, which received a D on the report card. As we all know, development results in more impermeable area, which results in more runoff and the pollutants associated with that runoff. The Montana Department of Environmental Quality regulates 14 permitted municipal systems, or MS4s, which stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer Systems. These systems include the 7 largest cities in the state, as well as other facilities such as Malmstrom Air Force Base at Great Falls, the University of Montana campus at Missoula, and the Montana State University campus at Bozeman. The department also regulates numerous industrial facilities and hundreds of construction sites around the state. It's noteworthy that the department does not regulate most agricultural-based pollutant sources such as feedlots, nor communities with a population less than 10,000. In the past 5 years, 7 regulated cities have started collecting and allocated millions of dollars towards infrastructure and staff investments. However, Montana is trying to catch up after years of underinvestment. With regard to capacity and condition, there's not a significant threat posed to public safety or property. It is recognized that small nuisance flooding does occur, and occasionally there's some major flooding which happens. Without future improvement, though, there's going to be more significant damage, which is going to occur more frequently. Typically, there's no designated stormwater funding source. A municipality or facility must rely on general tax funds or rob from other utility funding to work on their stormwater utility. Municipalities such as Great Falls and Bozeman have implemented a stormwater utility to collect revenues from ratepayers to then provide a revenue stream for upgrades, expansion, and maintenance of their stormwater system. The committee did make a number of recommendations with regards to stormwater. Some of these include formalizing a statewide stormwater organization, completing a statewide condition assessment, and developing a new or expand existing stormwater districts in an area. Now, I do understand that this is quite a tall order, but I also believe that we must start someplace. Schools earned a D-, the lowest grade on the 2018 report card. I do emphasize, though, that this is with regard to the infrastructure, the bricks and mortar, not the education itself. Some facts about our schools. There's more than 145,000 students attending 121 K through 12 public schools across the state. The average age of these school facilities is 53 years, and 68% of the schools were built before 1970. We are seeing funding gaps for damaged or worn out systems and facilities, code and standard violations, and excessive energy costs where the insulation isn't very good or doors and windows are very outdated. The committee does see that this grade will be improved significantly with the next report card. Over the last 3 to 4 years, several districts have passed bond issues for new schools, new facilities, additions, or improvements. And you can see in some of these school districts, these new buildings and improvements have already been made. Wastewater received a C- on the report card. A few items of interest and some facts that I'll share here. There are 229 public wastewater collection and treatment systems serving 62% of the state's population. There are 149 public lagoon systems and 41 public mechanical treatment plants throughout the state. There are also 26 lagoon systems owned and operated by tribal governments or other such organizations. Many mid and large-sized municipalities have completed major upgrades in the recent past on their wastewater systems, serving 25% of the state's population. These include facilities at Missoula, Butte, Kalispell, Billings, and Great Falls. 24% of the mechanical plants have not been updated in the last 20 years, and various pieces of equipment are nearing the end of their service life. Lagoons do have adequate capacity, however many are getting fairly old. About 55% have not been upgraded in the last 20 years, and 30% have not been upgraded in the last 30 years. Similar to something we see with water distribution systems, wastewater collection system piping is old, it's causing problems, and is a concern to the operators. Some funding information and data that we collected. Montana needs $363 million for identified wastewater infrastructure improvements. Comparing this to funding data for both the water and wastewater facilities, the current total in annual investment is between $160 million and $170 million. So that you can see there's quite a significant investment gap. The replacement rate is estimated to be between 1.1% and 1.4% of the estimated replacement value. And again, this is in consideration of both the water and wastewater infrastructures. Looking at this a different way, it would take between 70 and 90 years to replace all of Montana's water and wastewater systems at this current rate of reinvestment. Now, I'm not advocating that everything needs replacement right now, but this is a good benchmark to show the shortfalls that we are having here. If it took between 70 and 90 years to replace everything that is in operation would still be getting that much older all the time. Bridges earned a C in 2018. On average, Montana's bridges are 44 years old. Roughly 7% of bridge deck area is poor or structurally deficient across the state, and this compares to 9% on a national basis. Some good points on bridges. The passage of the fuel tax increase in 2017 has provided the state with much needed additional funding for bridges. However, we are just beginning to see these positive impacts. Of the top 10 most traveled bridges in Montana that had low ratings for various criteria, this is based on inspections 2017, 3 of the 10 bridges are currently being replaced or have been replaced since that inspection. Montana's roads earned a C- in the 2018 report card. The state has some of the least crowded roads in the country, but effectively move over $100 billion worth of goods by truck each year and millions of travelers by car. The capacity is considered sufficient, but the condition is a challenge, with over 45% of the state's major roads in poor to mediocre condition. Road pavement conditions continue to be the top transportation system concern. Since 2014, Montana's fatality rate is on a downward trend, but there has been some fluctuations. In 2014, there were 1.58 fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles. This increased to 1.81 fatalities in 2015, but then fell to 1.44 fatalities in 2016. The 2017 Montana legislature did take some positive steps in the right direction by providing an additional $30 million annually for the state's transportation network. It's estimated that driving on the rough roads in Montana cost each Montana motorist $385 each year in extra vehicle operating costs. The 2018 report card gave energy a C. Here are some facts and interesting information on the state's energy infrastructure. Montana produces almost 28,000 megawatt hours of electricity on an annual basis, but consuming only 14,000 megawatt hours. Montana's power generation comes from coal, petroleum, natural gas, hydro, and other renewables such as wind and solar. The state ranks 38th in the nation for residential electrical rates. Approximately 25% of the entire nation's demonstrated coal reserve is based in Montana. In 2016, Montana had 5 major coal mines operating, producing 26,700 short tons of coal. With data comparing 2015 and 2016, total coal production has declined almost 25% for surface mines and 12.6% for underground mines. And if you've been watching the news, you've been seeing that figure decline even further. Dams earned a C- on the report card. It is estimated that there are 64,000 reservoirs in Montana, and this includes everything from Fort Peck Dam, Tiber Dam, Canyon Ferry, the larger dams, to the thousands of stock reservoirs throughout the state. There are 197 high hazard dams, 200 significant hazard dams, and 2,860 low hazard dams throughout Montana. This hazard classification is dependent upon the potential loss of life and property damage downstream of that dam should it fail. There's about 34.5 million acre feet of holding capacity behind all of these dams. However, this capacity is decreasing over time due to the sedimentation that occurs. 99 of 119 high hazard dams are found to be in satisfactory condition. For significant and low hazard dams, the conditions vary quite a bit, dependent upon inspection and maintenance requirements. Regarding public safety, 87% of the high hazard dams have an emergency action plan in place, but as can be expected, very few of the low hazard dams have such a plan. It is rare for a properly inspected and maintained dam to fail, which does make sense, and really, when you think about it, you just don't hear about a dam failing. Various recommendations were brought forth by the committee. One of them is the continued outreach programs to educate dam owners, to educate the various dam owners on inspection requirements and maintenance, especially maintenance of these dams to keep them intact and not fail. A C- was earned by the drinking water infrastructure on the 2018 report card. I've got some interesting facts and observations to pass along here. There are 2,160 water systems in the state operated by both public and private entities. Over 400,000 people, or 39% of the state's population, are served by just 12 of these community systems, with 210,000 people, or 20%, being served by another 100 community systems. The remaining 41% are served by both small community systems and individual private water systems. Several of Montana's largest cities have made major upgrades to their water treatment plants and distribution systems in the recent past. However, the vast majority of the smaller communities are just unable to keep up. It is estimated that the average age of pipe in the ground is between 55 and 60 years, with intercore piping in the larger cities being between 75 and 100 years old. And of course, there's still lead pipe in the ground and in service. A majority of Montana's water systems are meeting federal drinking water regulations, with just 69 of 737 municipal systems being at risk or under some form of enforcement. It is estimated that Montana will need over $1.15 billion, that's billion dollars, in funding just to meet the identified immediate water system improvement needs. And it was felt by the committee that this figure was understated. There are 1,675 certified operators in the state. However, about half of these are 55 years of age and older. So you can see that there's going to be a definite need for backfill in the immediate future, and this will then lead to the need to train new operators to help with this backfill. Solid waste is one of our better infrastructures, earning a B- on the report card. One reason for this is that we have about 38 years of remaining capacity. Also, the overall condition of these landfills is relatively good. That's because most of these facilities were either constructed or upgraded in the last 25 years. One area where we could improve would be in diversion rates. Right now, we divert about 22% of the solid waste to recycling or composting, whereas the national average is much better at 34%. In the 1980s, there were about 300 solid waste facilities in the state, whereas there are only 32 in operation today. The overall condition of the support infrastructure at these landfills is relatively good. However, in poor condition are the rural transfer stations and container roll-off sites. This is because many of these were constructed over 40 years ago. Rail is our last infrastructure, and it proved to be the best one, coming in with a B on the report card. There are 3,375 miles of track in Montana. This includes 2,265 miles of Class 1 track, over 900 miles of Class 2 track, and 200 miles of Class 3 track. About 55% of the trips pass through the state, whereas 42% of the trips originate within Montana. The remaining 4 to 5% are interstate trips. Overall, the condition of the railroads are considered to be good, and this is due to the investments that the railroads do put into their rail system. This investment includes $150 million per year by BNSF. The Union Pacific spends about $2 million per year on their rail system, and the Montana Rail Link spends $60 million per year. Rail accidents have decreased by 55% in the past 10 years, and in the same time period, employee injuries have decreased by 63%. Even though railroad safety has improved, recommendations by the committee does include additional funding towards at-grade safety. Here we see a comparison of the grades from 2014 to 2018. As you can see there, energy, rail, and stormwater were not graded in 2014, but they did receive a grade in 2018, whereas irrigation, canals, and transit were dropped from the 2018 report card. Overall, the grades remained the same with the exception of wastewater, which did improve somewhat, as was discussed previously. There's not much to brag about with the 2018 report card. There's a lot of room for improvement. We must continue to make infrastructure a priority, and I have seen this happening in the last few legislative sessions, due in part by the efforts of the Montana Infrastructure Coalition. We must encourage local governments to raise their rates and their revenue to really reflect the true cost of service to their customers. This increase in revenue is then another funding source to get additional matching funds from other state and federal programs. And as you might expect, inflation does take its toll. The longer we wait to invest in our infrastructure, the more costly it's going to be to Montanans as a whole.